Welcome everyone to the Cultivating Compassion Education Series, sponsored by Compassionate Care ALS. We're honored today to have with us Heather Pillar, who's author of the new book, Memento Morrie, Images of Love and Loss, and she'll be sharing some new inspiration from Morrie Schwartz, the wise professor profiled in Tuesdays with Morrie. Heather was a news and documentary photographer in Boston before moving overseas to teach for 25 years at international schools in 7 countries. She returned to the United States in 2020 due to the coronavirus pandemic. Heather revisited her negatives, expanding the original story of Morrie's philosophies in a visual format for her new book. Heather's photographs have been exhibited internationally and published in newspapers, magazines, books, and on TV. She holds an MA in Sociology and Women's Studies from Brandeis University, a BS in Graphic Communications from Carnegie Mellon University, and Teacher's Certification from Goddard College. Please visit heatherpillar.com for a curated list of helpful books and resources. Welcome, Heather. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce Ron Hoffman, our founder, to say a few words. Welcome, Ron. We got to get your mic on, Ron.
Yep. And James, we're getting some sound of the wind from up there in the mountains of Colorado. So if you can mute yourself.
Okay, sure.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks everybody for showing up this morning or this early afternoon, wherever you might be. Yeah, I met Heather some time ago, and she had reached out and told me of the book that she was in the midst of writing. And she did a book talk a couple of weeks ago that I was part of here in Falmouth. But you know what struck me after that, Heather, and what strikes me even now, I think it's been 29 years since Morrie has passed. And, you know, those were the early days. I was, just in the world of ALS then, in the beginnings. But what truly, truly has struck me, what you've created here in your book, to me is what true awareness is. Morrie had no agenda. It wasn't about research. To me, it was just about an extraordinary man, an elder, who is sharing his story, who is sharing what it means to be living with ALS, quote, a fatal illness. And, I actually woke up thinking about that this morning and just how powerful that was. Here is a man who is sharing wisdom, not just about the end of his life, but about his life. And it's just really, really powerful. I was remembering the book, and you have created such a beautiful pictorial here that expresses it even more. So huge appreciation for that. To me, this is what awareness should be about. And there is no drama. There is no chaos. There is no anger. There is no lashing out at people or our healthcare system or anything. And to me, that's what's really, really important here. So with that, Heather, I hand it over to you. Thank you for being here. And again, thanks everyone for showing up.
Well, thank you, Ron and James, for the wonderful introduction. And thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm really happy to share my my experience really with Morrie, who was really so inspirational. And, at the time when I photographed, I was a student at Brandeis University, and I was 32 at the time, and Morrie wasn't there. He, I, my professor talked about him, and so that's how I got to know him. So really, this book is really, I've thought about it for a long time because I knew I had these beautiful pictures that really needed, to see. Some of them have been published, but like as a whole, I really felt like it needed, I just thought it might be helpful for people, and especially after the pandemic. So let me see how to. Okay, so the first thing is that after the or like around circa 2021, uh, I read Ron's um, book, Sacred Bullet, and I thought I could answer these questions. On page 187, it said something about Morrie's long nights of fear and loneliness, which isn't really shown in Tuesdays with Morrie, um, and the impact that on Morrie's family and friends. Also about caregiving, which I really think needs a spotlight shown on it, and overcoming with spirituality and self-care. So knowing that Morrie had talked about these things, I really felt like it was important to put that into the book. So about Morrie, he was a professor of sociology, author of 5 books. And as I said about my professor, his name was Morrie Stein. He talked about Morrie's journey, about learning about how to die with dignity, about um, living with ALS and the losses of his, bodily functions. And they, Morrie Stein had a contact at the Boston Globe, and they did an article. And then from that article, uh, the producer of Nightline, his name is Richard Harris, he was talking with Ted Koppel, who is British, and Ted Koppel was saying that in England, really there's much more of a connection between death and dying, from it, like people sort of talk about it. And here in the US, he noted, same as I did, that especially back in 1995, that there was no real talk about how to come to terms with, dying. And um, so he wanted to do a profile, and Morrie was the right person, and that's why he came back 3 times on the Nightline program. And then actually when Ted Koppel signed off on Nightline in 2005, he also reprised the Morrie story. And so I think it just shows that this is a story kind of for the ages. It affects everybody, and it's one of those it- that people can relate to. And then, of course, Mitch Albom saw one of the Nightline episodes, and that's how he got in touch with his professor, who he was very close to when he was at Brandeis, and then lost connection with him for 16 years. So it was definitely this progression of how Morrie got to be kind of iconic by this point. So my professor, Morrie Stein, and what I was studying was sociology. But I wrote to him, and then he wrote, I knew from the first that your photo studies of Morrie had qualities of heart and mind that went beyond anything that would be captured through the written or spoken word. It was an honor to have had the good sense to encourage you and thereby associate myself with this wonderful project. And you can see, I think the picture of is worth 1,000 words, but you can see how much Morrie read. I'm pretty sure he read every single one of those books there. And that they were very close. And so uh, so we came up with the project. So it was my professor Morrie and Morrie Schwartz and me. And so the project was my photographs paired with Morrie's aphorisms, and he wanted to see the show before he died. And so he had been calling his book Living While Dying. He was writing a book at the time of his aphorisms and expanding them. And so it was, I put the show up I photographed starting like end of March, and then through September, the show was up at Brandeis, and then he died November 4th. So it was he saw the show, like, kind of virtually, like, I showed him what it looked like, and I showed him a lot of the photographs. And I photographed after the show as well. And what had interested me in the story that of Morrie's story was really about death. Because when I was you know, I grew up in Pittsburgh. There was a lot of at the time there was a lot of the steel mills were going, and the air was not very clean. And I had asthma, and I was in the hospital like a lot. And so I had thought about death. And when Morrie said that he had also had asthma, um, we had connected on that level. And it was just, he made me feel very welcome, like in a place when it was not a place. It just felt like being there, and even with his friends coming in, he also made me feel like I could be there too. And so he was definitely an extraordinary man in that way. And he asked me questions too about my life and who I was dating and things like that. Um, and so, uh, yeah, then he died, and he really, I remember him saying something along the lines of, really, I don't think anybody's going to remember me in 25 years. And so I think he'd be amazed and pleased that, his sort of selfless way of being and sharing, because I don't think it was all that easy for him to do that, to be so welcoming to everyone. But he said it took his mind off of his own pain. And that was really like a lovely reason for me that there was a purpose for it, that he really felt like what I was doing there was purposeful, what Mitch was doing there. And then all of his friends that came through brought him some joy, which was what life is all about. And I thought a lot of times that I should call the book Life and Death Matters, but I ended up with Memento Mori, mainly because that actually is his name, Morris, and spelled that way. And this is my first film, like, that I photographed, and this is from his living memorial. Again, he wanted people he had another colleague die rather suddenly, and he went to the memorial, and he thought that his colleague should have heard all the wonderful things said about him. So when he decided to do a living memorial, and his friends helped him, he actually did two, one at his home in, like, February, and then another one, and this is the April one, beginning of April, at, Brandeis. And so this is actually the cover, and if any of you are photographers, I'm photographing at the 0 film, which means, like, I used every single, um, like, film frame. And then this is the back cover, and it's the picture that, Morrie loved. He actually really loved this photo so much that he, really let me continue on. He did have a couple of parameters around this project. One was that I could not photograph his wife, and the second one was that he could call it off at any time, and I thought that was fair enough. And so that's how we proceeded on with the project. And so, as maybe some of you know about Memento Mori, it means remember death, literally in Latin, but not in a morbid way. The idea is that you remember that everybody will die, and that you need to make the most of your life. And what does that mean? So it means, for Morrie, it meant really, coming out, and being part of the world and connecting with people. And so, yeah, that's why he did the living memorial. And you can see that he enjoyed it. But also the pictures in the middle show that it wasn't all joy, that there were hard times too. And then he had the Letting Go book. That's from his, those are his aphorisms. And then it was reprinted, I would say like 2002 or something. And now this is Morrie in his own words. So there were two reproductions of this book. I think it's out of print by now. But as you probably know, Tuesdays with Morrie sold like 20 million copies. It's had a 25th anniversary. Um, that was in 2022. And so this is just to show you that he had this, he loved the picture so much, he put it up here on his bookshelf, which I thought, oh, that's kind of ruining the pictures, but now I'm so glad it's there. Mitch actually has a podcast named Tuesday People, and the reason why is that he and Morrie was his advisor, and they met on Tuesdays when they were at Brandeis together. And so Morrie had said at the time, hey, we're Tuesday people. And so when it was convenient for Mitch to meet him to do the Tuesday, his original plan was just to come up and say hi. When he called Mitch called Morrie. Morrie said, why didn't you call me coach? Because that's how close they were. And this was after 16 years. And then Mitch said, like, I'll come up and visit. And then it happened that he worked for the Detroit Free Press, but they went on strike that summer. So that's why he was able to visit for 14 Tuesdays and write a book. And that helped offset the expenses that Morrie was incurring from really like the caregiving and the self-care. And as you probably know, it really adds up. And then this is my my professor. So again, another inspiration for me. And I just loved that Morrie Stein was losing his hearing while Morrie Schwartz was losing his voice due to ALS. And on the Nightline episode, Morrie said, we will hold hands and there will be love passing between us. You don't need speech or hearing to communicate love. So Ted Koppel said just last month, he wrote to me and he said, focusing on the joys of family and friendship, the indefatigable prophet of optimism and joy, Morrie. Thank you, Heather. Through your work of love, we are all reminded of how much there is in life for which we must be grateful. And this is, really who Morrie was. This is really a collaboration with Morrie to have these kind of moments, and Morrie being so unself-conscious. He was able to really and I also was quite quiet. I tried to sort of blend in. And that's how I didn't photograph a huge amount because click, click, click is kind of, can be very intrusive. So I really tried to pick my moments. And Morrie and this is back in 95, but he believed in acupuncture. He felt like that really helped him with pain management. He meditated. This is his meditation teacher. And she had said to him that maybe death isn't the big wide chasm that you think it is. Maybe it's just a little bridge. And he thought this is a really great thing to think about. And then I'll let his friend Charlie Derber talk about this picture.
What you say, Mitch, is that this picture, I love this picture. And I love it because it captures the incredible pleasure and love that men can have for each other, and that Morrie and I shared for 25 years. So this picture, anybody looking at it will see that these are two people who really love each other. And, I'm tearful now of evoking this, that there's so much I'm missing from him as I look at this. But what comes through is just the joy of being with Morrie. Morrie is just such a deep human being with such profound love for people and for life. And despite difficulties and struggles that he had in many areas of his life, the picture I'm so happy this picture exists, because it captures two people who really loved each other and who, shared so many profoundly important things. And, we could cry together. And I'm not a big crier, actually. I did just lose a dog who I was so close to, and one of the biggest grief losses as well of my life.
Sorry.
Don't ever lose an animal if you ever have one. But yeah, this picture, I treasure it because it captures, the heart. This is a picture of the heart, and a heart shared between two men. And so I'm just very happy to have it. I'm very grateful that you took this picture, Heather, and that I have it with me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Oh, sorry. And then Jeannie, she visited on Thursdays. And so this is her story.
Yeah. And I took a class with him at Greenhouse, which was in Central Square, personal growth group. And that's how I met him. And I didn't keep in touch with him too much after the courses ended. I did a bunch of them. But then I saw in the Boston Globe, professor teaches his final lesson or something. And I'm like, whoa. And I called him that morning. I called him at 9, and we hadn't seen each other in probably 15 years. He said, "Can you come over?" I said, "Sure." So I came over, and that was the beginning of it. I visited him. My husband said I could write Thursdays with Morrie because I visited him once a week. With Morrie, it was never. I couldn't wait to go over and talk to him. We would laugh, we would cry. He'd tell me stories. I'd tell him stories. He wanted to see some audition pieces, which I remember because I went to Brandeis. I did an MFA for Brandeis in theater. Oh. So I did some pieces for him. And we just laughed. And the picture you took, I know you took a few of them, which I still have, was Josh,
yes, right.
Over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a lot older now.
And so about caregiving, this was like a little mini story, a little series. So, getting up and sort of a little dance, and then the hug, which I think is just the little summary of caregiving, about how it is a bit of a dance, and it is definitely, hopefully, caring in both directions. And so that's what I'm trying to convey with the photographs. And Morrie's aphorism to go with it is, "In the beginning and at the end of life, we need others to survive, but here's the secret. In between, we need others as well." And this is Rob Schwartz, who is the son. Morrie and Charlotte have 2 sons. And Rob wrote the foreword for my book. He was he still is a producer and a writer, and lived in Japan for many, many years, and has recently, and again, COVID brought him back. He was in Boston for a couple of years, and now he's living in LA.
It's a very intimate photo. Obviously, it's capturing the love and affection between my father and myself. We had many, many, many moments like this throughout our life. But truthfully, it's kind of difficult for me to look at photos from this period because, Dad is so frail and sick, and mainly since, I had spent my whole life with him until the time that he passed. I think of him as much more vibrant and alive and healthy even, and active. So this was a very brief period actually of time when he was sick. It only really was about 6 months when he was extremely ill and couldn't really move around. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to look at, and it's not, what I think about when I think about that. But it's a beautiful photo, and it definitely reminds me of that time when we were together at the very end of his life. We shared a lot at the very end, talked about everything basically that had transpired, and all the memories that we had. So it was nice that we had time to share all those things. As he also said many times, it's a blessing to have the time to be able to share when you know that the end is coming soon. People who die without warning, you don't have that time to share with them what has happened between you. So, yeah, the photo brings back that time period, the memory of that time period.
Okay, and so the last time I visited Morrie was October 25th, and he died November 4th at the age of 78. And Charlotte, so just they are, she lived on till 98. She died in 2021. And she was, this is something that Morrie asked to have put up in the exhibition that I created, that Charlotte was involved in every aspect of Morrie's care. As a private person, she did not wish to participate in publicity. And they were definitely partners, and they are at Newton Cemetery. And so I reached out to Charlotte, and she wrote back, and this was maybe like about a year before she died. She said, "I'll treasure the 3 photos you sent of Morrie. Actually, I have 3 other photos like these, and each is a treasure. I was glad to know you're living your life and still think of Morrie. It has been a long time since we were together, and still it doesn't feel that way. So thank you again for the photos. They represent so much of the love between Morrie and my sons, and that it just makes me happy to look at them. My best wishes." And so I do visit Morrie and Charlotte, and one of Morrie's, again, aphorisms or phrases that he would say was, "Come to my grave, you talk, and I'll listen." And I think of that often, that, and so it's, he's basically saying, like, come, bring a sandwich, like, and just talk. And I think, death doesn't end a relationship. If there's love, it will continue. And his purpose for reaching out this way to really, to Mitch, to me, to the Boston Globe, to Ted Koppel, is the reason I agreed to expose my dying from ALS to the public is that I want to stimulate in people a greater awareness of our common humanity by looking into that most human experience, dying and death. I do so in the hope that it will evoke more compassion for oneself and for others. And currently, 15 of my photographs are at Marblehead Arts Association. And so they're up through September 22nd, and I'll be doing a book talk on September 15th. That's a Sunday. And so this is a 40-second thing that I put up on YouTube just to show, or maybe it's 20 seconds, but anyway, it could be a little quick. So, but this is the show. And I have a bigger show coming up, and that would be at Woodruff's Art Center in Mashpee, and that the opening is October 10th, which is a Thursday night. And so that's Woodruff's Art Center in Mashpee. And the opening is from 5 to 6:30, and you're most welcome, everybody. And that show is up through November 15th. Let's see, sorry. Oh, I guess I have to get out of that. I think that might be it. Let me just look at one more thing, or how to get out of this. Am I still in this? Yeah. Okay. So I think my last slide is really about the other um, shows that I have coming up. I'm going to New York City, to the International Center of Photography, and then I'm looking at libraries. So Medfield Public Library, there's a book talk Thursday, September 19th. So I'm happy to sort of take this on the road as time allows, for me. And if you have suggestions for places for me to talk, I'm happy to learn about them. Okay. I will get things back, and I think I should be putting this. I don't know why I have this on Do Not Disturb. Okay, there we go. So questions. Does anybody have any questions or comments or?
Yes, I have a comment. Actually, I could have lots of comments, but just have one or two. And for me, the beauty of all this, what Morrie was doing, in my words, and it took me a long time to learn this. Morrie was very much bringing forth his way of dancing his own dying. You know, for those of you who know me, I often speak about becoming more familiar with the reality of your mortality. Not only for ourselves, but when we're able to do that, it can often have direct impact on our healthcare system, our healthcare team, our physicians. Because oftentimes, in my opinion, if those in healthcare aren't willing to become more familiar with the reality of their own mortality, then how are they best able to tend to Morrie? And I say that they can't. Yet Morrie had this really beautiful way, the wisdom and the ability to really dance his own dying. And more important than that, and I was trying to remember, I wrote in a blog or in our newsletter about care and the importance of, it's not just the caregiver tending to their loved one living with ALS, but equally as important for the person with ALS caring for their loved one who's caring for them, for goodness sakes. And Morrie was a beautiful example of that. And I mean, Heather, you can speak to this, because my big question where was his wife?
Mm.
Right? And yet Heather can be able to speak to that. But in many ways, and this is just my judgment, I would assume he didn't want his wife to be part of this. She wanted to be in the background. This was about Morrie. And God only knows how hard it was for her to witness her husband navigating this. But his love for her allowed him to let her stay behind the scenes in regards to his notoriety. And looking back on that, I truly, truly appreciate that. That was his way of caring and tending to her as he was navigating the complexities of his own death and his own dying as he was living his life. And I would invite all of us to really, and it can be really hard, but to be willing to explore that reality.
Yes, he was
Go ahead,
very
Heather.
much of well, first of all, he said to me, and which is something that really stuck with me, is he said, marriage is full of compromise. And I thought that that was really, um, I wasn't married then. And I think that I know now I'm married almost, what, 27 years, and I can see what that means. So I think if you I think you're absolutely right that he was tending to her and she was doing her best to tend to him, and they in difficult circumstances.
When did Morrie pass away again?
November 4th, 1995. And then she lived on till no like it was November 30th, 2021. So I think she was 8 years younger, but still, like, that's almost 30 years, right? So she she lived on, and she was very active up until the end. She lived till 98. She Yeah, she didn't remarry. She had her community, is really community and family. It's the things that they valued: family, community, friends, and then the spirituality and this and the caregiving and the self-care.
I was wondering, Heather, if you could say a few words about, in your view, having been there back in the day and been with Morrie during those days and with the book being written and everything, the Tuesdays with Morrie, what was it about Morrie and that particular, I don't know, situation or how it was expressed that made it so incredibly meaningful and beautiful to so many people? What was the magic there?
Well, I think this, and I've just come to really realize that, so it really was Maury's personality, but it was also a lot of like special things that happened that made it kind of lucky that he became so relatable. And um like Tuesdays with Morrie is it's not a big book. You could probably read it in 2 hours, and it's like it's worldwide. Like, people can relate to it, which is like there aren't that many books like that. And then really the publisher never thought this would happen, that it would become like a bestseller. And so what really happened was Oprah Winfrey. Mitch was on Oprah Winfrey. It was profiled. They got a big response, and they said, you should really print more books. And the publisher really just didn't believe that, but that's exactly what happened. And then other and then from there, and I think, my observation about American culture, back in the 90s. So I know, like, if you recall that time, for those of you old enough, maybe. So it was definitely like a very young, live life and very individualism type of, I don't know, environment, I would say, like Wall Street and, that sort of thing, where it was, where, like, and the economy was doing so well. And so it really felt like people weren't really dying, or it wasn't really, it was definitely in the shadows. I know from my grandparents, they, like, I had a grandmother who had Alzheimer's, and she died in like 1992 or 3, and at the age of 90, I think she was 92. But anyway, it was very much of a kind of a it was sad. There was nothing joyful about it. It was just painful to watch her deteriorate like that. And so anyway, and my other grandparents, who were, um, they didn't want to. They would not be like a Morrie. They didn't invite people into their home, and we're very much of a like we're not going to talk about death and dying. But I think there's a lot of research out there about once you start talking and making sort of like talking about what makes life worth living, it really does help. It helps sort of ease ease the fear.
There's a question here in the chat from Diane. She says Morrie clearly wanted to share his positive life lessons with friends, students in the world. In your conversations with him, Heather, what did he struggle with the most during his time with ALS?
Well, so I have a few photographs where like he could shave one side of his face, and he tried to do whatever he could, but then the other side he needed help with. And so and then also on Nightline, there was a test of wiping his butt, and how to sort of come to terms with that. And he said that he's trying, and I'm sure that is not an easy thing to do, but he tried to embrace the whole idea of being taken care of like a baby again. But trying to look at, like, even though that is awful, he tried to look at it as there might be something to be learned from somebody else taking care of you.
Heather, this is Max Snyder. I read the book shortly after it came out because I was interested in the living and dying process and just got caught in the wave. But ALS was not real popular back then. And now, full circle, I'm fighting ALS, and it was only then that I realized that that book was really about it wasn't about ALS. It was about living life to its fullest, and it means a lot. You can live in this world traveling down dark roads, or you can choose life to its fullest and be thankful for each day that you get up. But thank you for what you did to bring it back to life again.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Great comment too, because it really is about the part about death is there, but it's really about life and love.
And if I could add one comment to that, my take is Morrie knew on a soul level how to be in the reality of his mortality, to be in the reality of his diagnosis and his impending passing at some point, and yet he chose to live his life as well. It's that dance. And anyone confronted with an ALS diagnosis, that is the ultimate dance. How do I learn to be in the reality of this and yet not allow it to continually take us down these incredibly dark paths, which are there? But like Morrie, how do I learn to live my life while I'm doing this? Because there's so many questions, there's so many unknown answers. And I mean, that's just what I see day in and day out. And as an organization, our staff see day in and day out. So kudos to Morrie for actually leading the way. And I wish more people could really peel through those layers and get a better understanding, like Max, of exactly what all of that was about for him.
Yeah, Morrie was saying that he would allow himself to feel kind of maybe I'm paraphrasing and not these quite the right words, but feel a little bit sorry for himself in the morning, and he would kind of put a time limit on it, like, and just say, "Okay, that's it," and on with the day. So I think it was at most an hour, and then he would try and shift his mindset, and I think it helped a lot to reach out to other people, and especially joyful people who would help you, who would help him actually, um, like, and that's the amazing thing for me, and I think it was hard for Charlotte, his wife, was that the house was full, and it felt very much like, "Am I intruding? Is this a good thing?" Or, so at that point, I wasn't that secure as a 30, even as a 32-year-old, but, to go into, like, basically, it felt like taking away time, but I think I gave a lot to him, and to the relationship, like, I enhanced the relationship that he had with other people through my photographs. So it might be something just to consider, is like, you know, maybe you do have, or, capture those moments, which are, they can it can help maybe the people who are left behind, your loved ones, and think about the things that, like, just you can continue to make good memories. I think that's what Morrie is trying to say.
In such a humble
I
way.
was wondering, pardon me, Ron?
I said in such a humble way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was just listening to both of you, and I was thinking about something that Ron talks about often, which is the sacredness of the dying process and the way in which it's a, kind of the ultimate rite of passage other than birth, and how it seems like people really sort of birthed Morrie into what was next, that mystery of what happens after we die. Did you have a sense of that, Heather, when you were with him?
Yeah, I mean, I think because he was so, I don't know, inviting and welcoming, and also, like, one of the things he also said was about learning, continually learning is the secret to life. So I love that. I'm a teacher after all, and so was he. And he was always teaching and learning, and he was sharing what he was learning, and in a nice, gentle way. And that's what is so appealing. And it's, like, Morrie is, like, kind of revered in Asia, where the culture really is very, you know, uh, where teachers are more respected, I should say. So there's definitely, it's hit a note for sure around the world even. And so I just thought that, as a teacher myself, that these photographs, hopefully people can learn from Morrie's, from, yeah, the experience that I had with Morrie. Exactly. And Mitch, I don't know that I mentioned, but Mitch Albom, he was saying, like, it's so, it's beautiful, like, and I think it's complementing the Tuesdays with Morrie story. So Mitch's story about, he was a former student. Here I am. I'm I'm a student at Brandeis, but I wasn't Morrie's student. But how I came to photograph was really because of my other professor, who was also very much of a, you know, just perpetually learning. And I think that that's, it's it's a beautiful thing to keep learning throughout your life, even up until our anybody's eventual, um, we will all die at one point, and it's about how we're going, like, just our, I think, attitudes towards life and love is really how you're defined.
Well said.
There's a comment in the chat here from Diane. She says, "It's so wonderful to see Morrie again through these remarkable pictures." Thank you, Heather.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for, yeah, just um, being interested, and I hope it's helpful.
No,
I'm
this
just
is
curious, are you from all over the country? Is anybody
yes, Heather. We got people from all over. Yes,
okay? Yeah, wow.
all over, indeed.
Great.
And the last comment I have about Morrie is his ability to continually learn, like you just spoke of, and yet to continually be the teacher that he was and what he was learning, the ultimate teaching, actually. And
Yeah.
not just with Tuesdays, but with Morrie, but your book. And as you said earlier, he thought he was going to be forgotten.
Yeah, and I think it's, there's something about, like, just the, I don't know, the karma, the something in the air that has brought, it's kind of like we need this. And so I don't know, I dream, when I came back from Brazil. I was living in Brazil teaching, and came back, and I started dreaming of Morrie. And this was just something, like, it's like, okay, I must do this project. And so it really has been a labor of love. And I just feel like a little bit of a little spiritual guidance is happening here. So
Excellent. Any other questions, anyone? Any comments or thoughts? Okay, well, please note that this is recorded and it will be on our website under our educational library. So take a look later and share with friends. Thank you very much, Heather, for joining us today. Ron, any final thoughts?
No, just huge gratitude, Heather. And can we put Heather's website out there? Or Heather, can you
yes,
repeat your website for us, please?
right. It's Heather Pillar. So Heather, Heather, Pillar, PILLAR.com. And then you'll see a link to Tuesday People, which happened last Tuesday. And I am developing a list of helpful resources, books, and things like that. So there are a few books already on, and I will link a few more in maybe after this afternoon. And you can also find a way to buy Memento Morrie.
Beautiful. Okay.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you
Thank
so much. Thank you.